I remember one time I'm a little late on this project. And this project is supposed to go live on Friday, and I still hadn't done my stuff by Friday morning, and my colleague comes up to me and he starts sort of like getting really upset with me. He's like, "Where's this thing?" And my natural reaction was so defensive. It was, well, you know, the bus was late this morning, and I thought I was gonna do it this morning, and all this other time this week was commandeered by someone else. And he didn't care. He didn't have any time for my excuses at all. He just wanted results. And he was the best person in the world at this particular job. It's like playing sports with Michael Jordan or somebody like that. You have somebody who just raises the standards for you and doesn't accept your excuses. And I remember going back to my desk after this conversation, and I made a list, and I made this long list of all of these things that I had done over the past week. And I sort of like got angrier and angrier as I emailed this, more emotional. And then he just replied to me and he's like, "I don't care. I don't want to work with you unless you can get the job done when it needs to be done." And then he said, "P.S. buy a car. You don't have to take the bus." And I just thought it was one of those moments in your life where you can sort of go one of two directions. And you can either not associate with this person, which is what most people I worked with did. They wanted nothing to do with him. Or you can sort of think, this person has higher standards, unreasonable standards, not only for themselves, but for me. And am I gonna learn a lot by working with them? And I chose that path, and I think it really works because we're born into life and we accept the standards that our parents or our friends put on us. And if we're lucky, those are above average standards. And if we're not lucky, they're sort of like average or below average standards. But when we grow up, we can choose our own standards.
So the book is called Clear Thinking. What is this book about?
It's about putting yourself in the best position possible to make decisions and get the desired results that you want. I had just finished working for a 3-letter intelligence agency, and I wanted to take all the lessons that I had learned during the 15 years that I worked there and sort of digest them for myself. I had no intention of writing a book, but I wanted to synthesize the ideas and compress them into something useful. So there's 4 different defaults that I talk about in the book that sort of, these are the moments that commandeer your ability to make decisions. If you think about when you're most likely to be rational, these are the moments when you're least likely to be rational. And we have emotion, we have ego, we have social, and we have inertia. And all of these things combine. And perhaps like an example will help you understand what I mean by this. Consider social. We are predisposed socially to say yes to things that we don't want to do because we want people to like us. We do this at work when our boss comes to us and says, "Can you do this?" And we can't do it and we don't want to do it. And maybe we have too much on our plate already, but we say yes. And we do it with our friends when they come to us and they're like, "Can you go out for drinks on Friday next week?" And you don't feel like going, but you still say yes because you don't want to disappoint other people. So these are the moments where we're not thinking in that moment, we're just doing what we think other people want us to do. We want to be liked by other people. And one way around this is to sort of create automatic rules. And I was with Daniel Kahneman before he passed away, and we were talking in his penthouse in New York, and his phone rang. And he answered his phone, and it was funny because at the end of the call, he said, "My rule is I never say yes on the phone. I'll get back to you tomorrow." And when he hung up, I said, "Danny, like, I've never heard you talk about this before. What is this rule thing?" And he said, "Well, people call me all the time and they ask me to do these speaking events or endorse books or do this thing. And he's like, I used to say yes, but I never wanted to say yes. I was saying yes because that's sort of the inertia, the default that people say. I didn't want to disappoint other people." And he said, "So I came up with this rule, and the rule is that I never say yes on the phone." Now, there's 2 interesting things here. If you say, "No, that date doesn't work for me," or "No, that situation doesn't work for me," then you're in a negotiation with the person on the other end of the phone. All of a sudden, there's this opening to negotiate. But if you say, "My rule is that I never say yes on the phone," there's no room to negotiate with that. One trick you can use at work to get more out of people is "is it the best you can do" trick. I used to have this guy that I worked with, and everybody has this person they work with, and this person would put together a really crummy first draft, whether it was a memo or a PowerPoint presentation or whatever it was, and then he would send it out to the whole team, and he would be like, "What do you think?" And then everybody would start filling this in for him, and it really annoyed me. So at one point, he sent this email out and I replied to everyone and I'm like, is this the best you can do? And the reason behind that is we can do so much better, but we get accustomed to sort of not doing what we're capable of. And then we get accustomed to sort of like putting in a minimal amount of effort, but not the maximum amount of effort. Well, I don't want to read your work unless it's the best you can do. I want you to put all your effort, all your best thinking into it. Then I can learn from it. Then we can talk about it. And then we can make a difference for everybody. And if everybody's putting in their best work, if you're working beside somebody who's putting in their best effort, you're more likely to put in your best effort as well.
You mentioned in the book the importance to define the problem, to know what is the decision about. How do we do that?
If you're working in an organization, that you break up the decision definition and the problem solving into two different meetings. Now, those meetings don't have to take longer than the one meeting would have, but creating a gap between those two meetings is super important. So when I was running teams in a large organization, I used to have one meeting to define the problem. What is the problem we're dealing with? What happens in most companies is that you go into a problem solving meeting or a decision meeting and somebody throws out an idea that sounds good, but around a whole bunch of educated type A people who are really good at their job, what happens next is somebody throws out a problem that sounds reasonably good, and then all of a sudden everybody jumps in on solving that problem. You spend about 3 to 4 minutes sort of defining the problem, and then the rest of the time in the meeting solving the problem. But odds are, in my experience, you haven't defined the problem properly, and then therefore all the solution is not just wasted, but it's a lot of energy that's sort of misdirected. It's much easier to take that hour-long meeting and break it up into a 30-minute meeting and another 30-minute meeting to get clear on what the problem is you're solving.
Your book is called Clear Thinking. You spent, I guess, a lot of time writing it. So you, personally, do you manage all the time to think with clarity?
One of my biggest worries putting out this book is I would somehow be labeled like the guru of clear thinking and somehow come across as superhuman. But as my kids remind me all the time, I'm not always at my best and I don't always make the best decisions, but I do try and I try to learn from them. And I think that if you follow the advice in this book, you'll be in a better position at work, at home, and with your relationships, and it'll help you live a happier, more meaningful life.